So, Paul, how have you been?
Good, good. All's good. We had a good win at the weekend. We had a good win against Sale the week before. So yeah, life with us is all right at the minute. We just got to keep going. What about yourself? How's everything with you?
Yeah, good, thank you, mate. Not quite on the field anymore, but you boys are ripping in at the minute, aren't you? It's going quite well.
Yeah, I think there's some things that we want to get better at, and we're pretty disappointed in after both matches, probably leaking too many tries. But we've played Sale and we've played Gloucester in the last 2 weeks, and we've come away with 10 points. So we've got to be really positive about those results and try and build some momentum coming into the business end of the season.
Yeah, that's it, mate. It soon comes round at this time of year, doesn't it? Once the internationals are done, and before you know it, you're looking for a home semi-final, I imagine, aren't you? And things like that.
Absolutely. I think Saracens are quite far away. I think Seals still have a bit of a gap over the rest of us, but Premiership Rugby has shown this season last year that anyone can beat anyone, and the table can flip and turn very quickly. The difference between third and ninth is not very much at all. So you lose one, you can drop. You need to keep winning to stay in the hunt. So you want to be looking up. The aspiration is to get a home semi-final, but feeling that you got to be in the top four, and give yourself the best chance of winning something.
100%, mate. So before we get stuck into your rugby story, Paul, where was home for you as a kid and who lived with you?
Oh, geez, home for me. So I was all over the place. So I was born in Belfast, and then I moved to Londonderry or Derry, depending on what way you want to look at it. When I was a baby, and I lived there for the first 9 years of my life with my mum and dad, and then we moved across to Wetherby in Yorkshire with my dad's work in 1987, and then came back to Belfast in 1990. Went to school at RBAA, Belfast Inth, was there, and then left Belfast in 2007 for Northampton, and I'm still here. So long time coming. So mum, dad, younger sister, and then my brother was actually born whenever we were in Wetherby. So three of us.
Right. Yeah. So how was the competition at home with you and your brother, mate? Was it always fierce?
Do you know what? There's actually a bit of an age gap between us. So there's 12 years between us. So how the competition wasn't that fierce, apart from I let him win all the time. So what we used to do, so whenever he was young, he was into his wrestling. So he was in all sorts of wrestling moves. When I was throwing myself around just to entertain him. But I helped coach his mini team and helped with his junior teams, and always kept it. It was a great little distraction just to be involved and help him as much as he can. So the competition was there, but it wasn't really proper competition.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So have you always had that side to you then, Paul? Have you always liked the nurturing side and to help people develop, basically?
Yeah, I guess I have. I guess there's a big kid in me. There's a big child in me that just likes messing around and having fun. Whenever my career in Northampton was coming to a close, myself and my wife Gemma, we bought my eldest son was born Hughes, and so we bought the franchise to Rugby Tots. And brought it to Northampton, which is rugby for 2 to 7 year olds, and it was a great experience. Great experience from building a business up, but also messing around with what you can do with a business and try and get it up to speed, teaching kids, mucking around with kids. And it's really just about fun and engagement. And I find it actually quite easy to get to their level until I clicked into that quite easily. And that was a great experience and great learning. And it's been, a lot of fun, there's always the dad that says, oh, there's something special in him. There's something special. And you're like, that's great. All I can smell is his nappy. So there is something special in him, but I think it's actually out of him now. So that bit's gone. But yeah, I've always had interest in that. I coached whenever I was at Ulster. I coached my old school. I helped out. I helped my son's team. I helped coach a wee bit here, and I coach with him during the week here. And I've got an eye on the pathway program here, so I like to see development. It's great to see kids get better and achieve and reach the potential. If you can help them achieve that potential, that's a win-win for me.
Yeah, and obviously with the talent evolving, the game evolves as well, mate. So it keeps you in touch with how the game moving, I suppose.
Absolutely. You want to see what's coming through at Northampton. You want to see what's coming through the pipeline. We regard ourselves as a club that develops its own players. It has a pathway. There's a pathway to the first team from the under 14s up, that there is a way forward, and we develop players, and we want to bring our own. They have our identity with the club. See how they develop. If you can create your own talent and pathway, that's exactly what you want. That's the gold star, because it means something to the players to play for the club, but also the supporters that come along can have an affinity with them. So I remember him, my son played against him, or I remember watching him play at those age, or he's from my club. And I think that's one of the great things, that you can have that connection with people.
Yeah, like a double buy-in, isn't it, basically, mate?
Absolutely right. It is. It's a reason, you need to, it's an extra reason for people to come and watch you on a Saturday, to have that real connection, that extra buy-in. I think that's really important.
Yeah, no, it is 100%. So how was you introduced to rugby, and where was your first club, pal?
So I was, I spent my primary school playing football. Really, I just played football the whole time, and I didn't get into rugby until I hit secondary school. So even though I was in Wetherby up in Yorkshire, big rugby league territory, I never played it, never did anywhere near it. My dad played when he was younger, not to much of a standard, although he'd probably kill me whenever he listens to this. But it's only whenever I went to Instant and the availability of football wasn't quite there. So I played rugby, knew that was going to be it. So I just played for my school team, and that was it until I was completely hooked and addicted from the outset, and it's all I wanted to do all the time. And whenever I left school, I went to play for the old boys Estonians, and I played a couple of really happy years there. Then I went to play for Ballymena in the All Ireland League, and it was during those times that the Ulster thing sort of came around. So yeah, I'm really lucky that I played school and managed to get the club thing from a senior point of view as well. I'm really fortunate that I had that amateur connection, and I still managed to play.
Yeah. So when you think back to the football, mate, how was it as a kid growing up playing football? Did you find it clicky? Was it hard to break into?
I think whenever I moved across from Northern Ireland to Yorkshire, I was, absolutely petrified. Didn't know what I was going into. Full on Northern Ireland accent, went across, and I think within about 3 weeks I had a full on Yorkshire accent. So I'd flipped it around. The kids had influenced me. So was it hard? I hadn't really played to any sort of standard. I just mucked around at home. So it was nice to go to, and there was some just kids at my school. They went and played for a team called Wetherby Athletic. I just went and played there and mucked around with my mates, and just really enjoyed it, got into it. So yeah, I was pretty welcome, to be fair, because I had some school friends that were there, and I just loved playing sport. I just loved being around the place, and it was great because you got to play against guys at the time. There was Mervyn Day, who was a great Leeds goalkeeper, and you were playing against his son, so you were on that sort of circuit, and a big Man United fan, which wasn't easy back in the late 80s. I can hasten to add, but we used to go to Old Trafford a fair bit and watch the game. So that was just brilliant. I just loved being around it, loved having fun with it, and it was just I still have some of the medals from it. There used to be an article in the paper in the local rag, the Wetherby. I can't remember what it's called. The Wetherby paper. My mum used to cut out the little match reports from under sevens and every week. So they're on the. She used to put them on the back of a playing card and wrap them in cling film. So they're still about the house somewhere. So
that's I have brilliant.
Great memories. And whenever I went with my wife, we went back to Northern Ireland. I can't remember when it was. I think it was about 2007. Now, bear in mind, I left England in 1990. We popped in on the way. I was feeling a bit nostalgic, so popped in and saw the Ings where I used to play and where my old school was and everything else. So the club's still going, so it's brilliant. It's just really nostalgic. But I really love my time playing football there.
Yeah, no, and that's what sport's about, isn't it? It's there long before us. Hopefully, they're long after us, and what we do in the middle is what matters to us, isn't it? Really.
Absolutely, you want to leave it in a better place than you find it. So that's the ideal for me.
Yeah, and when you go back and stuff, mate, how do you find it? Is it developed? Has it changed, or do you get all them memories flooding back and the little giggles, and does the kid come back out of you then?
The kid always comes out me whenever I go back. But I went back to Northern Ireland in the summer, and we took some friends from Northampton back, and we went up to the North Coast, and I mentioned my first club, Estonians, there, and I went up, and the kids were messing around in the harbour, and it was like that team that I had seen that I played with were just. I saw about 12 of them, and I hadn't seen any of them in some of them 15, 20 years. So it was actually fantastic to see them. There was a reunion. We won the Senior Cup back in 1999, and there was a reunion in 2019, but work I couldn't get back from. So, but I'm still part of WhatsApp group that everyone's part of, all of these groups.
That's what it's about, isn't it?
Absolutely. Just that connection with people. And it's just brilliant, and it's nostalgic, and you start telling stories, and then you start thinking that's a story that you probably didn't want me to tell, but you probably thought that one had stopped back in the day whenever we were younger, a lot more reckless. But yeah, those times catching up with people is that's what's brilliant about sport. You might not see people for 20 years, but within an instant you can click back into having a crack and abusing them and getting verbal abuse. So it's awesome.
That's it. Yeah, no, 100%, mate. And obviously we'll touch on what you do at the minute, but is it, when you go back to them times, mate, does it remind you fundamentally of why you got involved in football and rugby? Because as much as we spoke about a little bit before then about the business end and the business side, which you'll go into in a bit, we all start fundamentally because we love the game, don't we? And we love being in that environment and that. So they're nice little reminders for you.
Absolutely. I think it's really important that you have that. I got into professional sport by complete accident. It wasn't part of the plan. It wasn't part of what was supposed to happen. So I'd come through school and the amateur bit, and I just loved it. I wanted to be involved in it, and I enjoyed being out Tuesday nights and Thursday nights, and I loved playing on a Saturday and the away trip, and the away trips on the Saturday night and staying at different places. I just loved all of that stuff, and I think even if I hadn't got into professional rugby, I would still be heavily involved in club rugby in some shape or form, because I have so much admiration for people that do it, because you can almost take for granted that if it's not for people volunteering and to put stuff on for kids and their kids' rugby teams and the adult teams, if it's not for the effort of people putting it in, it dies. It doesn't happen. Yeah. So you've got to appreciate and really give value and applause to those people that give up their time as volunteers to do it. It's those club people are absolutely so important. I live in Northampton. There's a big park beside us. It's about 3k round, and there's a few rugby pitches on it. And I remember going a couple of years ago, and there was a game on, and it was just a load of guys just mucking around playing a match. And I said to the boys, let's stop and watch this for 10 minutes. And they're used to watching international people and all the rest of it. I said, these guys are awesome. These guys are properly awesome. They're like, what's it? Because they just want to give up their Saturdays and go and play with their mates in the park, have the crack, play rugby because they love it. They're happy to get changed, roll around the dog muck that might be around the floor.
I was going to say that they probably just shifted some.
Hopefully there's a few cones scattered down because no one's got the poo bags to lift it. So they play around it. They go get changed in the car. They go to the pub, have a couple of pints, and go home. That's awesome. That's amazing. Those are the proper guys that absolutely love the sport, and it's just a reminder that those guys they're class. I love them. Anytime it's on, I'll go and watch it because I think it's just brilliant.
Yeah, no, it is, mate. It is. So we'll go back to you then, Paul. And you mentioned a bit of football there, mate. Is it something if it had come, you'd have gone with it? So was there any rep stuff as a kid in football?
I wasn't good enough. I'd like to think that I was, but I wasn't good enough. I played with a guy called Andy O'Brien, who went on to play for Bradford and Newcastle and the Republic of Ireland for quite a number of. He made quite a number of caps and had a long established career, but I was nowhere near that level. I wasn't quite built for football either, but that was all right for me. It's different. It's different. It was different then than what it is now. My son's kind of been through it to an extent, but no, I was never. It was never long term for me. I was never going to be I do love it. It's probably my first love, my passion. But and I've played as much as I can now. But my knees remind me that I can't cash the checks that my mind wants to.
Plus, it's nice to see that we're doing well now with Eric Ten Hag in charge, isn't it, mate? Things are turning, hopefully.
Absolutely, I love him. Absolutely love the man. He is. I just love what he's done to the place. And I know there was stuff with Ole before, and we were all excited, and I got caught up in the romantic notion of it, even Ronaldo. But what Ten Hag's doing, you're like, okay, mate, I'm with you. The two lads aside, we love Martinez and Casemiro or
Casemiro, different level. Again, we talk about levels right through it, mate. The different levels that you can see that.
Just. People say he's a born winner. You're like, no, he's not. You don't see the amount of work he's put in to get to where he is, and just he has a presence about him. He knows exactly what he's doing, but he's a much better footballer that I think all of us knew he was. I think when he topped up, he was just going to hold it back and not let anyone through. Then all of a sudden he's picking these passes and scoring goals. You're like, oh wow! I would listen to Scholes and Neville, and if they're saying he's the closest thing since Roy Keane, then I'm like, well, I will listen to you then. I will bow to your.
That's it. Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, well, I was quite lucky. I was brought up in that class of '92, really. So I only knew success, and then that transition we've been through. It's sore, isn't it? It hurts, and then obviously Liverpool are doing well from where I'm from. There's loads of Liverpool fans.
It's good. But
no, it seems like
my kids, I keep saying to them, it's going to be all right. Just ride it out. It's going to be all right. I've been there. It's okay. It's okay. Yeah.
But it generally feels like it will, doesn't it? That's how it feels at the minute.
It does. It feels like, there's still a massive gap to close between City. Liverpool are just going through a wee bit of transition at the minute. Arsenal have clearly got their act together. Chelsea, if they ever get that basket case of a club, sort of, they could maybe be dangerous again. But it just feels like there's a bit of stability that we're going in the right direction. But what do I know? I'm just a big fan.
I'm the same, mate. Yeah, I'm good on Football Manager. That's about it. So how was your transition into high school then, Paul? How did you find that?
Do you know what? Coming from Northern Ireland can be difficult at times, especially if you don't have the knowledge of the politics behind it, and even that as a boy going into secondary school, I didn't really have the understanding or the knowledge of the political background that was there, and just how bad the situation could actually be, and what it meant to be a Catholic and what it meant to be a Protestant. And if you said the wrong thing to the wrong person in the wrong place, or you found yourself in the wrong place, and if you said Rangers instead of Celtic, or vice versa, you could land yourself in a bit of bother. And so the transition was a lad that was effectively came in from Yorkshire, didn't really know. Mum and Dad just said it'll be this, it'll be that, just give me a basic understanding. I didn't really know, and it's only whenever you get into school you don't know anyone, and then there's some boys who it's really clearly they've been brought up on that, so you have to think really quickly and think on your feet and be really fluid about your answers and work things out very quickly. It had to work things out very quickly. So that was a really steep learning curve for me, just about people's backgrounds and what it meant. Because in England, religion doesn't really, back then it didn't feature much. You didn't think anything of it, and you really still wouldn't see any big divide between Catholics and Protestants. So to go back and see it firsthand, you're like, geez, this is a bit of an eye opener. So I'd say that transition was probably more difficult than anything else.
Yeah, and again, you touched on it a little bit there, mate. It won't be the kids' knowledge really, but it'll be what they're fed with, won't it? It'll be the dislike from the older generations creeping through, I suppose.
It's I guess some of it is it's a learned behaviour, and it's from the background and what they're each to their own, their personal beliefs and their family beliefs, and how they've been brought up, and what they respect and what they don't, and what they value and what they don't, and what's important to them. It's a lot of it it's learned behavior, come from the environment that's they're in, and that's absolutely fine. There's no issue with that. But for someone who didn't know all of that stuff, I had to
that's reality.
I had to get that learned behavior on my repertoire pretty quickly.
Did sport help with that at all, mate? Or
don't get me wrong. I never had an issue with it. It never caused me any problems. It was never a problem. Sport was just a great outlet for me to go and do. And you could see people in class, and whenever you're in your first year at secondary school, you're still finding your way, and you're still trying to learn and work out. The people you meet on day one of school, if you're lucky, they're your best mates the whole way through school. The likelihood is you end up sitting beside people whose surname starts with the same letter as you. So you're sat in alphabetical order, you sit near them, and then you see them for the first few weeks. You do a few tests, you realize that they're closer to the front of the class and you're closer to the back, and you don't see them much. You don't see them over the course of the rest of your school career.
Yeah.
But the sport is where I found my friends and found the people that I was close to and I'm still friendly with now. So so you're right. That was not an escape as such, but it was my sort of way of getting to know people.
Yeah. And without being rude for a lot of people around that time and in that place, it would have been an escape, mate, wouldn't it? It'd have been just an even playing field. And whatever jersey they had on, if it was your jersey, you were teammates regardless of what was going on. And
absolutely, it didn't matter to you. And there's guys that I played against that I still see every once in a while. Whenever I go back, it's Northern Ireland's a funny place. You almost, if you see someone from Northern Ireland, the first question is, what school did you go to? So you can kind of work out, did you know someone there, or did you play against someone at the same time? It's a funny thing, but it's definitely a Northern Irish thing.
Right. So when did rugby sort of become thrust onto you, and when did you realise this is a bit of me?
Do you mean as a career or later on, or just
at school, mate?
At school, yeah. So at school, so how it worked, there was hockey and there was rugby, and during your first year, you did a term of rugby, and then you did a term of hockey to make sure that there was balance and everyone got to go of everything.
Yeah.
And those were the winter sports. And after that first term, you decided what you wanted to do, and it was like, that's very clear. I am going to play rugby. That's what I'm going to do. And never picked up a hockey stick after that. And I was very much a winter sport kid. I didn't play cricket. I didn't do athletics in the summer to any level or any proper interest. I was completely invested in rugby and just wanted to play all the time. Loved going to the rugby training. Loved the matches at the weekend. Got completely into the whole thing and watching rugby special and going to watch my club at Stonians and watching the internationals. Completely invested in the whole thing. So it wasn't kind of thrust upon me. I sort of thrust myself upon it. Is probably a better way of putting it.
Yeah. So when it comes to like the standard of playing, mate, was you playing club rugby as well as school rugby?
No, in Northern Ireland, there was no club rugby. You just played your school rugby. So that was just
until senior stuff.
Until you left school, and then you went and played for your club. So it was all just school stuff. It was training twice a week, playing on a Saturday. Didn't know any different. That was enough for me. Yeah. Head down, did that. Didn't do any other sports. Didn't do anything outside school. Just was rugby, just school rugby, and that was it for me.
And what would the crowd be like for a school game in Ireland? Is it a big deal or?
So traditionally, the Schools Cup final, which is played on the 17th of March, would always have been the biggest attended rugby event at Ravenhill. So you used to play, and there'd be 12,000 people at Ravenhill for a schoolboy event, which was amazing. That was kind of 1990. That was that's always been the way it was. The way through the schools would go, but people would go because it was a St. Patrick's Day. It was a bank holiday, so people would go and watch the game. As the game turned professional, it changed ever so slightly, but it was always the best attended game in the calendar was the Schools Cup final. So it was always a great event, and it still is. It's still broadcast live on BBC Sport now. So it's I would still watch it if my school's in it.
Yeah, what an occasion that'd be if you were involved as well. That many people in the best ground around, isn't it, at the time? And what an occasion.
It's special, and you're so lucky to be involved in it, and to be, if you can do it with your mates, that's all the better. Like, it's just brilliant to be there. The whole school is there. It's almost tribal because you've got young men supporting their team, and they're up for it. The drums are out, the black and yellow, the colours are out over the course of it. If you're playing a big rival, it's just there. You're probably playing against guys you know quite well and mates, and it's about bragging rights and everything else. So it was just fantastic to be involved in those days. It really was. It was really special.
How was you before the game as a schoolboy, mate? Was the nerves there, and did you deal with them very well? Or?
I wasn't really nervous when I was a kid. I was just excited to go out and get going. I was just like, let's just go and play and see what happens. I don't really have any recollection of being nervous. I remember whenever I was captain, I felt the responsibility to get the team riled up and make sure they were ready and have them wind up. The old school. On 5, ready, go. We're going to go on 3, and then someone shouts 4, and then you just lose the roof. So always happens. So
there is one.
I felt there's always one. On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Ruined it, but no, those I was always pretty calm and relaxed, and probably just it maybe just went over my head a wee bit. It's just like, I'm just going out to play rugby. That's all I'm going to do. The occasion is the occasion. Win, lose, or draw, I can only go out and throw myself around and give it full whack. But I knew that I was conscious that I knew that I was one of the players in the team that the others would look to do something, and to make something happen. So I guess I felt a responsibility from that point of view, that it would give people a lift if I was able to do something. And I guess I quite enjoyed that. I quite enjoyed going, okay, follow me, lads. I'll do something. You know, we'll make stuff happen today. So I did enjoy that, but I didn't really feel any pressure at the time.
That's great for a youngster to be able to separate an occasion from a game, because it's difficult, isn't it? As an adult, never mind a kid.
And I think you're right. I think it's really difficult. There's almost a lot of pressure, and we're a lot more aware of mental wellness and mental well-being, and the stress and the strain that comes with it, and how we look after people and how they treat it. You know, I read a quote the other day: professional rugby, occupation, professional rugby player, and you're like, no, he's a young man that plays professional rugby. That's absolutely right, because there's a stress and a pressure that comes with it, but where does that pressure come from? I say to the kids that I coach, and I say to to my sons that play, I said, you can only control the controllables. Don't worry about the external stuff. Just keep yourself calm. Focus on the stuff that you do, and just do that, and just go out and enjoy yourself. It's the second you stop enjoying it, that's when we stop. If you don't enjoy it, we don't do it. So it's how you deal with pressure. Pressure makes diamonds, but it also bursts pipes. So you got to make sure you get that. You got to get that balance right, and go out and enjoy it, and rise to the occasion. Don't be worrying about what they can do. Just think about what you can do and how you can influence it, and you can influence those around you. But it is tricky. It's a hard thing to, and that's not for everyone. Some people need the nerves. They think the nerves is normal. As I got older and I played, I definitely got a bit more nervous because there was a lot more at stake. But young people, it's just go out and enjoy yourself. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. And if you lose, you've probably forgotten about it by the time you've played your music in the changing room, got changed, and had your food. It's forgotten about. It is not going to define you, and it shouldn't ruin the rest of your year or your career. That's not how it works.
It's a mate, if nothing else, isn't it? It's just something to learn from.
Absolutely. You've got to learn all the time, and learn about yourself and how you handle things, and what did you learn from the last time you played that you could take into this one to better prep yourself. Just wee bits like that make a difference to kids.
Yeah. And positional wise, mate, what was you playing as a kid?
I think I was always in the front row. I never really got out of it. Yeah, it was I think genetically that's where I was always going to be, and ended up at hooker. No one ever chose to play hooker. No one ever grew up wanting to be a hooker. Not tall enough to, not fast enough to be a back, not tall enough to be a back rower, not heavy enough to be a prop. You want to play, you're going to be a hook. So you want me to go in there and hold my hands out here and be completely exposed whenever I go in there? Yeah, all right, I'll do that.
Okay.
if that's what it has to be. So I was there. I was always in the front row. I played prop, and then moved to hooker as I got older. As everyone got bigger around me and I didn't. So I was pretty mobile. Hooker's probably the right position for me as well, in fairness.
Yeah. And was you someone that needed an early touch, Paul, or could you bide your time and come into the game when you needed to?
I always wanted to get involved in the game early. I always wanted to get a shot on, or get the ball in my hands, or get a throw and settle those bits down. As the longer it went on, the more pressure built up, and I was like, get into the game early and have a. I always felt if you got a positive first outcome, it made a big difference. You could go with that. You're like, good, I'm on the ball here. I can go with it. And it was Andre Best or Coach Toby. Even if you had a bad touch, you spend the next, if you lose the ball, you do a bad throw, you spend the next 30 seconds running around trying to win it back. Just focus on that. I know that's not necessarily the right thing to do, but it actually gave me a focus that it was just a moment in time. 30 seconds, try and fix it. If you can't, then we get on with the next one. There'll be plenty of other opportunities. But yeah, you're right. I always wanted to get into the game quite early. I would always be frustrated coming off a pitch if I didn't have much of the ball in my hand, or didn't get to get some touches or get any involvements. We all have parts to play, and sometimes the most important thing is making all your tackles all day long and hitting rucks all day long. and the greater good is the team winning. And if you contribute to that, great. But sometimes you're like, I just wish I had the ball in my hands a wee bit to try and do something with it.
Yeah. Was you given that license like a free roll sort of reign, or was you a structured team?
There was a fair, as I was coming through the system, there was a reasonable amount of structure, but I was given enough rein to pop up wherever I felt necessary, wherever I felt there was going to be an opportunity, or just maybe hang on the wing. And I probably hung on the wing maybe just a bit too much, hoping to get a run in while someone else was doing my work. But as you get a bit older and a bit wiser, you get a bit cuter about how to get in. And because I was reasonably able skill wise, so I could make a pass and I could do a draw and everything else. So I was used a fair bit for moves. So I was encouraged to go and get my hands on the ball and see what could happen.
But I'm going to say, basically, we're allowed to play what you see, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You had, I guess, the formative years for me playing professionally was whenever there was structure, you had to play in a structure. But games would open up and opportunities would arise, and defenses aren't completely set. There will always be holes in them, so there's an opportunity to get in the end of the pass. I was always one that was always looking for, tracking if there was an offload. Always looking to try and get in the end of an offload on the inside ball, or tracking to see if, because that's where the space was. I might not have been big enough or strong enough to get the offload, but someone else might have got through half a gap, and I was looking to get on the end of that pass to see if I could get in behind and get a run up the pitch.
So you'd flood the channels, mate. Either side of an arm. Yeah,
absolutely, get in behind them.
Yeah. So what did leadership do to you? Was it something you enjoyed, or early days did you feel a little bit of added pressure with leadership, and did you realise you'd had it in you, really?
I guess it was sort of came from for something that I wanted, and it was prestige. It was always prestigious to be the captain of your team, and the way inst rugby was, and probably old school boy rugby now then was quite important. The captain was the captain was. It sort of had a status with it, and that was quite important to me. And I learned from good people around me. And I played for my school first team when I was 15, and I learned from the captain then, Paul Arnold, who was brilliant. I learned a lot from him, and I sort of took that with me. So I found myself in positions of leadership whenever I got to my senior school. I was captain, and I really enjoyed it. I was captain of Ulster schools, and I enjoyed that responsibility, and always felt that I was able to add value to people with knowledge. And I was always someone who was very encouraging. I was always like, pump people's tires up, make them feel good about themselves. And I've always had an interest in it. I've always, I've got books on my bedside table about it, and you listen to people from different walks of life and what they do. So I think leadership is ever evolving. It's a no one size fits all model. You can take snippets from everywhere and learn everything. So it is something, it does really interest me. Yeah,
it's got a broad horizon, isn't it? Some people are doers, some people are sayers. People are pretty good at like autocratic motions. Other people listen. It's just a monopoly of ideas, isn't it? Leadership, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's different leadership styles work for different people, and
different people.
In some places they need the style at that place is completely different to the style of leadership at somewhere else, and that's absolutely fine. Everyone has their own style that works for them, but I think you have to be knowledgeable about that, and you have to keep evolving. You can't stay still. You need to be thinking about the next thing and adapting to the people around you, and how you can inspire them and get more out of them. And so you're not saying the same messages and being bored and changing the dynamic. I think you have to constantly try and improve yourself all the time. And once you stand still, you may as well stop. You're done.
Yeah, because you just get took over, mate, don't you?
Absolutely.
So what was your relationship like with referees? Is it something you've always had a good little bond with? Because it's key, isn't it? Especially, so not only are you in the front row, you're running a line out, you're running a pack, you're probably a link with your spine, so you're 2, you're 8, you're 9, you're 10, you're 15. And then along with that, you've got to have the frame of mind in the heat of the moment to be able to speak to the man in the middle with respect and accept what he's saying to a degree, haven't you?
Yeah, and being hooker, it was always difficult, because on one hand you could go from a scrum where you have to be revved up to the max because you're going to go and hit and have all this pressure going through you and try and dominate the scrum. And then 20 seconds later, you could be going to throw a line out. So you need to go from being wired to the moon to completely calm and placid to make sure you've got all your processes in place to throw the ball in. So there was always that balance of emotions that you check with. But referees, for me, it was always growing up, it was put into us that you respect the referee, and they've always been served. And that's always been the case for me. It's always been the referees or the people you can have a conversation with them. You've got to respect them. At the end of the day, if we don't have referees, we don't have a game. So keep them on sides. Be polite to them. And even the kids I coach now, I say to them, a referee has never changed his mind. He has never said, "Do you know what? You're right. I'll give the penalty the other way." It just doesn't happen.
No.
And you try to say that refereeing is such a hard job. They have so many things to look out for. They have to see things that everyone else has the benefit of having a different angle and video and 1,000 camera angles and all the rest of it. They don't have that. They're going to make mistakes. So it's like if a player makes a mistake, he's made a mistake. He hasn't done it intentionally. He's not cheating. He's just made an error. You gotta get on with it, and you gotta play to the referee as well. So some days, I think for a lot of kids, if a referee is having a bad game or if he's being slightly more lenient to one side or the other, then learn from it. Learn to adapt. It'll actually make you better if you can perform in that sort of adversity. I think that's really important. The refereeing thing for me has always been really, really easy. We need referees. You know, the guys that turn up, like I said earlier about the guys that go and play in the park. The referee that turns up and refs it in the park, amazing. If we don't have them, we don't have a game. So
you can be rocking up with dog shit bags as well.
more often than not, he is. You hear the stories about the Sunday League football and the referees having bricks through the window get beaten up. You're like, why do you bother? You know, do you not realize you lose these guys and it's gone? And for me, it's rugby has always been simple. The referee is sir or miss or whoever's refereeing you, and it's complete respect. Dead simple. If he makes a mistake, he makes a mistake. You just got to get on with it. It's very straightforward.
Yeah, I would say we're on a level of our own when it comes to respecting officials. It's like you look around and we don't surround them, we don't harass them. It's a civil conversation. It's yes, but will you look out for this next time? Or we felt he done this, but they back off. And I think we're on like an elite level with respect there. I'd say, aren't we, compared to other sports?
I think so. And I think the refs will respect you as well if you have a good manner with them, and if you actually show them respect and approach them at the right time, they'll have respect for you. You know, some of the biggest characters in the game have been referees. You know, Nigel Owens is still very well thought of, and Wayne Barnes is so well respected in the world of rugby, and these guys have got plenty about them. So you can actually have a bit of fun with them. Tony Spreadbury's one of the most famous ones. He left his microphone on when he went to the toilet in Bath or Bristol, I think it was back in the day, and everyone could hear him having a wee. But those things are, you know, you could have a conversation with them, and as long as you had that respect. And if you don't have respect, and if the referee doesn't have respect for the players and just dismisses them, that becomes awkward and difficult. So I think we're in a good. Whenever you see what happens with other sports and the rag being lost, it's a wonder. It's gone too far. I don't see how they'd ever be able to get it back. But you know, you think of if you can see a referee turning to Owen Farrell and saying, or Johnny Sexton or Maro Itoje, whoever, that's a decision. They turn and walk off. They might scratch their brain a wee bit, and if they make any sort of contact whatsoever, they'll get marched 10 yards. So you're like, so if the kids are watching that, you're like, well, there, if it's good enough for them, it's certainly good enough for you. And
that's all for everybody, yeah.
Absolutely. And for some kids, it's like it's black and white. So if the decision goes against him, he's cheating. So he's not cheating. He just didn't see it. He's in a different. He just made a mistake. So,
he's just good at it. Yeah.
Yeah. Just let it go. Just let it go. Don't argue with him. Just let it go.
So, was there any rugby league growing up for you when you went back to Ireland? And did you play any in Wetherby?
No, none whatsoever. The rugby league was never a feature. So whenever I lived those 3 years in Yorkshire, rugby league wasn't a feature. Went back. Northern Ireland wasn't a feature. I've never really had any association with rugby league at all. I'd be pretty straightforward and say I don't even watch it now. I don't have that much in touch with it. The most I have was Chris Ashton. Having known him for such a long time, that would be the most I'd know about it. So the only time I did nearly get involved with rugby league was whenever I think I was playing for Estonians back in the time in the late 90s, and Ireland Rugby League were just invited me along just to play and train, and I went along, and it was not really any standard, and I'm pretty sure I was hungover whenever I was training, and I wasn't showing it the due respect that it deserved. And it was through a guy called Innes Gray, who was a school teacher at the school where I was, and I did a bit of coaching with him, and he played a lot of it, so I went along with it. And just went like this, it's just not for me, and I didn't really fancy it. And I thought, if I'm going to do it, I want to do it absolutely properly, and I can't give this what it deserves, because for all you guys here, this is your thing, and this is what you do. But it's just, I can't give it that. It's not for me, and I can't give it that, and I'd be disrespecting you by half baking an effort onto it. So just no relationship with rugby league whatsoever.
That's fair enough, mate. So what was the script for you leaving school, mate? What was on offer? What was job wise, and when did rugby become the full-time thing?
So the plan for me on leaving school was to go to university and study sports science at University of Ulster at Jordanstown. Unfortunately, I performed very seriously underperformed in my A-level results, and that was the dream never quite happened. And I went to college instead for a couple of years it was called the North Down and Ards Institute of Further and Higher Education, and studied there for a couple of years before going to university and making that transition. But in the meantime, I was just playing club rugby, just playing for Estonians. And then I got a call up to Ulster in about 1999, the year after they'd won the European Cup, so my timing was impeccable. After they won the European Cup, I don't think they won a game in Europe for about 2 years, and I was part of that group. So so I got involved there. Was doing it sort of semi part time. It was professional. We was just in its infancy. It was just really getting going. And then the second I went back to university. Sorry, I did a year out. Alan Solomons came to Ulster. I was working in my old school for a year out, and then rugby started to get going. I went back to university and was doing professional rugby at the same time, but I was kind of not getting it right. I was making a mess of the university. I was so focused on the rugby that I was making a mess of the university, and I was like, I've worked too hard to get into university to mess it up, because I didn't know where the professional rugby was going to go or how long it was going to last. But I always had aspirations always wanted to be a PE teacher. I wanted to do study sports studies, go and get a PGCE and be a PE teacher. That's just what I wanted to do. But I wanted to give, but the rugby, the opportunity to play professional rugby was there, and I really wanted to give it a crack. I've got to give this a go. So I slow tracked I went to see the union and said, listen, I'm just stopping for a bit. I put it on hold for a few years and just focused on the rugby, and that's just where it went. I just got the opportunity to play. I was a fully contracted player. I completely loved it, immersed myself in it, and loved being in and around that also set up. I just loved being there from day one, and that was it for me. It came around by accident. It was never part of the plan. It's just my club form got me looked at. I never really considered it. Then all of a sudden there was the opportunity to make a career out of it, and it just went from there. It went very quickly from there. So yeah, that's how it happened.
I think was Simon Mason at Ulster when you were there?
Do you know what? Macy wasn't. He just he was. The first year I was there, Macy was there, and then he left to join Stade Francais, and then he went to Treviso after that. So no, but I did play with Macy. We played in Chris Henry's testimonial game about 2019. Macy was playing. So he still has no pace, but he can kick a ball. I remember
he can, mate.
I remember I turned up at Ulster, and he had the ball in the corner spot of the try line, and he was kicking the ball over the sticks. I remember just watching, going, this guy's a different level. He's just a different. I'd never seen anything like that. He was just knocking them over and over and over. He was phenomenal, but he's a great lad. Do you know Macy?
Yeah, so he's been on, and I used to play against him. So he played for Anselmians over the Wirral.
Yeah.
And Anselmians and Witness Rugby Union were in the same league. So we'd get the old speech of, he thinks he's on a few quid, and all that thing. Let him know you're about. So we'd let him know, but he'd sort of like have a little giggle as well. He enjoyed it actually, but he's a good bloke. It was nice to get to know him a little bit, but yeah, his kicking game, just like you said, a different level, really, out of hand, restarts, to touch on penalties. You're just never safe around him, really.
He was anywhere in your own half. He could knock it over from.
You're
no
in
matter
trouble.
no matter where it was. He was just going to keep churning the points over. And that year they won the European Cup. He was just phenomenal. But great bloke as well. I'm on there's a former players WhatsApp group for Ulster I'm on, and he's pretty active on it. He's a brilliant fellow.
I can imagine he is, actually. Yeah. So if we go back a little bit, mate. So you've gone from school to club rugby, and then you've gone from club rugby to signing with Ulster. So do you notice a change in levels?
Yeah, I did. I guess I noticed the change in levels, and I guess I noticed the change in the professionalism and how to behave. That was probably the big thing for me. When I was playing for Estonians, I was probably retaining too much water. If I'm being politically correct about myself, I just didn't know professional rugby. But then you're surrounded by guys who were living it. Guys like Macy come over, and even guys like Spencer Bromley that come in, and these guys were all Jimmy Topping, John Cunningham, Tony, lifting weights, eating the right things, and I had absolutely no idea about that. I'd never done weights or done anything. So that the biggest thing for me was how to behave, your diet, gym, activities, all the rest of it. That was the biggest shock to me. The rugby I found straightforward, but that was the biggest shock. I'm being so far behind them from a fitness point of view that I just have, Mike Bull had me running constantly. I was constantly running to the point where I actually loved it. It was a guy called Dion O'Connor, who was who was playing for Ulster at the time. He took me sort of under his wing, used to take me to the David Lloyd, stick me on a treadmill, and we would just be doing constant repeated efforts all the time, 3 or 4 times a week, doing it all the time. And got myself to a level where I actually was fit, and it ended up being one of the fittest people there because I realized that was the level you had to do. So that was the big bit. The rugby I found all right. I just found the other bit, that was the biggest body shock for me, was trying to learn and all those behaviors that were absolutely critical at that time. And even then, we were still quite
habits, isn't it?
Yeah, and then we were way behind the English clubs in terms of what they were doing. Way behind them in terms of their fitness and everything else, and their size and their bulk and their approach. Professional was in its infancy back in those days, but yeah, it was a very steep learning curve.
What was the chats like them days, mate? Because we'll talk about like your role in retention and recruitment. I can't imagine the chats then were like what you have now.
No, I just loved being in the environment. I just loved being around the boys. I loved just the crack of, what a privilege and a great job to get up every morning, have your breakfast and go and play rugby. What an absolute privilege. I just loved being in and around it, trying to be better. These guys became my mates. Some of them I looked up to for a few years, and then all of a sudden you're training with them and you realize that it's, you can't take this for granted. You have to really invest in everything while you're there. I just love being around the place, completely immerse myself in it, the crack, the everything. Probably got a bit carried away at times, but
as you do,
as you do whenever you're young. But I was so immersed and invested in the place that I just had those were such good years. I made so many good friends that I'm still really close with now, and still reminisce and laugh about it. So those were just the best days. The conversations now, you're right, they're completely different whenever you're talking about, but back then, just so much fun.
Yeah. And how was it signing for a club back then? What would they do? Would they invite you to the ground? Would you just meet at a coffee shop or something? Was it a pretty straightforward chat to sign?
So whenever I was signing for Ulster, I was invited in to train. You used to get a letter, so it was actually quite nice. You got a letter to come in and train that arrived to your house. So it's quite novel. So you turn up and train, and that sort of evolved from there. So the contract wasn't quite as grand and come in and meet. It was just an assumption. There was. If you were there, the only option was to play for Ulster. That was your area. That's all and you grew up. That's who you wanted to play for. It was your team. That's who you wanted to play for. So that was actually easy. So whenever you were handed a contract, you didn't ask any questions, didn't even read it. Just say, where to sign? What am I getting? You sign it, then you look at what you're going to be getting. You go, great. perfect. It's you know, it's free. It's free money. That's what I'm going to be doing. So there was no trying to court or anything else or any of the rest of it. It was just like you're here and that's it. It was all not very glamorous at all.
So was you nurtured through, was there like an A-League, Paul? So did you play any A-League to play first team or?
No, you went from playing All Ireland League rugby in Ireland to straight into playing for Ulster, and the All Ireland League was a pretty high standard. You know, there was whenever the Ulster stuff started, Ulster's gone from a club that used to play the interprovincial series against Leinster, Munster, and Connacht, maybe the Exiles, maybe the Scottish Saltires, Cornwall, play those games, maybe the occasional invitational game against Australia or someone. That's where it started, and then in between, everyone played All Ireland League, so you'd be playing against internationals and British Lions regularly. I remember playing for Ballymena. We played a Shannon team that had 7 or 8 internationals on it. I remember we played Cork Con in 2001, and it was Ronan O'Gara's last match he played before he went off in the Lions tour. So he was playing club rugby for Cork Con, kicked the drop goal in the last second to win it, and then went off and played for the Lions tour. So
jumped on a plane.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a really good standard, and if you were able to perform at that level, then you were actually going to be able to perform at in the interprovincial series. It wasn't enough whenever you went to compete in Europe against the big boys, but it was certainly a really good starting point.
I like that, the fact that it doesn't matter who you are, you played inter-country rugby. So for listeners and viewers that might not get that, it's a bit like the NPC, isn't it, in New Zealand and stuff like that. So it's like the county stuff basically. I quite like that, mate. I like that. It's a breeding ground, actually, isn't it? It's a nurturing spot.
It was brilliant, and it was a really good standard. And you went to play in some really good places. I remember thinking it was probably more. Whenever I moved from Estonians who were in the 3rd division, which was the bottom division at the time, to join Ballymena, who were the top division, that's where it was. That's where you wanted to be at. And I was probably more nervous about playing my first game for Ballymena at that level than I was playing for anyone else, because I was like, this is really where I found out, am I up to it? Am I going to be able to perform at this level and play with these boys? And because they've been playing it for years, it was used to them. But for me, it was like, I've gone from messing around in All Ireland 3, and I need to get myself in a position to perform at this league. And it was a really good standard. We had some really, really good players, good coaching, good players, great club, great infrastructure, massive support. So yeah, I think it was a great breeding ground for me, and really important. I got my Irish caps off the back of playing for Ballymena. It wasn't even Ulster. It was what I was doing for Ballymena, because how the season was structured. So for me, I'm very grateful for it, and I have a lot to thank the All Ireland League for.
Is that still about, mate? That's a great concept. Yeah, it's
still going now, and I think there's I'm not quite sure the construct of the league now, but I think there's 4 leagues now. Half the teams in it now completely different than whenever I was playing, and my old team in Estonians, they've gone from the junior leagues, they got promoted into the senior leagues, and they're sitting pretty at the top of it. So they've done remarkably well to be doing it. But it's still, I think, a good friend of mine, work with him at Northampton. He runs a podcast on the All Ireland League, and it gets a massive amount of viewers every week. So it's still massively popular, still really popular. It's still going. Yeah, really good.
Oh, that's great. Because without being rude, not many championship players would play international rugby in the UK, would be from championship level, like you've managed to, which we'll touch on in a minute if that's okay. Mm-hmm, so it's a great spot. I'm surprised English clubs may not use it as a bit of a, pinching a bit of talent, maybe.
Yeah, I think there was a time whenever there's a few of us left Ulster at the same time, and just thought that there was something else out there, and there were some guys from the south who went and did the same thing. I think for a lot of them now, if you look at the Leinster and the Munster and the guys playing for them, they grew up wanting to wear the blue shirt of Munster, the red shirt of Munster. They wanted to do that. That was their be all and end all. And being involved in the Leinster setup, they're probably going, well, I can't beat this, even though I'm not. I've always felt that there's lots of guys in Ireland could come across and make good careers and play in England and see what life's like and see there's more out there. But for a lot of them, probably going, I've grown up wanting to play for Leinster my whole life. If I get the chance to play 3 or 4 times, I want to do that. That's the dream for me. And
so that's the dream being lived, isn't it?
That's the aspiration. But I've always felt there's some guys who are like, you're too happy wearing a tracksuit. You're going to look back and go, I could have gone to England or somewhere and played 100 times, but instead of worn a tracksuit, and I've played half a dozen times. But each to their own. But certainly there could have been lots of guys come across to England and made a good career. And the best example is probably someone like Tommy Hayes, John Hayes' brother, who went and played at Plymouth and Exeter and was here for years and years. Didn't cut the mustard, quite make the grade at Munster. Came across, played in England, made a massive career for himself. Gareth Steenson, another one who didn't really get anywhere at Ulster, moved across to Cornish Pirates, went to play at Exeter, won Premiership titles, European Cup, legend, still at the club, got his own bar down there. You know, it can very easily happen.
Yeah. And why do you think maybe the same level in both countries? Sorry, mate, it's just crossed my mind now for players to do that. What is the difference in the standard? Does your body get more battered in one than the other, or is it a bit? What's the style of play in that league compared to our championship, do you think? I guess for players to do that.
I think the difference is that it's probably come, whenever I was playing, it's probably come full circle. There's not as much involvement from those professional players in Ireland to go and play All Ireland League. They don't get released as much. There's a few more games, but there's maybe not as much opportunity for them to play. Whereas in England, the Championship, National 1, National 2 is a much better breeding ground to have players ready, to give them exposure to play and to prepare them for Premiership. They're way better prepared in England now than what they have been previously. And I think it's sometimes one of the things that the Irish clubs are actually envious of us, because they're out looking to. They can only play each other so many times. I know Ulster have been across to play Ealing, and they try and play the other URC sides in A-League friendlies. So it's not easy for them to do that. But certainly the Championship is a much stronger league than the All-Ireland League is. No.
Yeah. So when your debut come around for Ulster, mate, do you remember much about it, the build-up and what it meant to you?
Yeah, it was. So I came in the squad in 99, and I sat on the bench for, I can't remember how many games I sat on the bench before I actually made my debut. And all of these games, I thought, it has to come sooner or later. And I actually made my debut in Toulouse. I came off the bench against Toulouse for Ulster, who were the European kingpins at the side. And we were losing, it was like 35-12 or something. No, it wasn't. It was 36-12, something like that. And we ended up drawing the game 36-all. And it was one of the best results the club had ever had. It's got nothing to do with my introduction, but I just remember going, what a place to make your debut. No, I can't take it. Can't take any credit for it. So what a place to make your debut, because it was in the massive Stade de Toulouse. It was in that massive stadium. It was just like, oh my goodness, look at this place. And whenever you got called that you were going on, you're like, are you serious? Here, you're going to put me on here. You wouldn't put me on at these other places, but you're going to put me on here. Right, bugger it, I'm going. So just went out, throw yourself around against those guys and go, what a magic place to make your debut. So yeah, I remember it so well. And everyone was so good to me afterwards. And I think I just grinned for a long, long time. And everyone had beers with me. And the Toulouse guys were actually all very, very pleasant and polite to me. So it was just an amazing place to play. Full stop. But to make your debut there was just really, really special. So yeah, I have a lot of strong memories from that day.
Yeah, so there was a few highs at Ulster, mate, wasn't there? As well as being capped, which we'll talk about in a bit, mate. It's things like winning the Celtic League, the Celtic Cup. You were nominated for Player of the Year. So all this comes thick and fast on the back of a great debut. It's a memory you'll hold forever, isn't it? And you can tell the grandkids, the great grandkids, and anyone that'll listen, really, I would. But but it is like everything comes on the back of that box being ticked and knowing that you're capable, doesn't it, mate? So talk us about what key moments stood out in them like silverware times, and how was it being nominated for Player of the Year? Is it validation, Paul?
It was really whenever we came, we got ourselves, and Alan Solomons had come in and he brought his guys with him. Phil Mack was his fitness guy, and we trained unbelievably hard. The pre-seasons were ferocious. So whenever we played against these teams, we were fit and we were able to run around and we were able to play. So it was such an enjoyable brand of rugby. And because the ball was always in play, there was plenty of opportunities for me to get the ball in my hands. And I came at a time whenever there was a group of exciting players. Paddy Wallace was there, Simon Best was there, David Humphreys was there, Johnny Bell, Ryan Constable was playing, Bryn Cunningham was there. We had a really exciting group of boys that were playing, and we were able to throw it around and play, and that suited me and worked really well for me. And I just loved being there, and I pushed myself really hard when it came to the fitness, and I was determined to be the best I could be. But I guess winning the Celtic Cup was brilliant, because we went to Edinburgh and did it, and we won the Celtic League, and that was amazing, an achievement in itself. But I guess the real highlights was whenever you played the big European Cup games at Ravenhill. They were massive. We knew that we could take on anyone, and we could beat them. The Wasps or Stade Francais or any of the big sides, in the big English sides or the big French sides, we knew they didn't want to come to us, and we would be in the fight, and the atmosphere was always incredible. I always got such a buzz out of playing those games more than anyone else, because you just felt it that it was going to be your night. And something happened as soon as the opposition got off the bus. Someone turned the sky black and turned the rain on. I think it was sunny whenever they drove from their hotel down, and they just walked off the bus and the life force was sucked out of them. But we just knew that we were going to be in it. But the atmosphere back then was just magic, just really fantastic nights. Playing with your mates, beating the best that Europe has to offer, it was just awesome. Those were the real highlights for me.
And it's through enjoying it as much as you did, do you think that's where the island stuff come from as well?
I think there was a bit of a corner whenever I was turned that there was an element of enjoyment, but I had to knuckle down more, and I always really enjoyed it, but I was always good fun. I was always up for fun. I was always up for something, and if there was a night out, I probably would have been one of the first ones sticking a hand out. Would have been up for it. And I think it was off the back of those performances that I tightened up my set piece. It was better. I was just coming to form at a good time. I was playing pretty well. I was pretty happy that it was going. And I guess it was off the back that the opportunity was there. I think that realistically, Eddie O'Sullivan was the coach at the time. I think he saw potential in me that he wanted to get out. And that's probably where the opportunity came around.
So first of all, mate, you played Island A, didn't you? So how is it? I'd love it to be, but is it like a letter again? Is it?
It was a letter, yeah. It was a letter, and because I'd never played any age group rugby, I was, there was guys ahead of me at Ireland schools and Ireland under-20s or 21s, I think it was back in the time. I'd never made the cut. I'd never made the grade, so I'd never worn a green jersey. So it was only playing for Ulster that you get the letter that you're going to be playing for Ireland there, and that was just absolutely huge for me. And I remember going down to train for those games and play in the hotel, and those were great fun. We knew that we needed to play well. We had aspirations to get into the senior national squad, but you could have a bit of fun with it as well. So we used to stay in Dublin and play those games, but they were I remember playing. I remember we played Wales at Musgrave, and I remember as soon as the kickoff went, I remember standing on the pitch in my green kit, proud as punch, and just going, just kick off. Because as soon as you kick off, there, I've played in an Ireland shirt, and you can't take that away from me. And that was that. And I remember I was interviewed afterwards, and people around me going, you just spouted on and on and on. I think I was just so high on adrenaline and giddy that I was just blabbering away about anything and anything. So no, it was. That was one of the most special moments for me, was actually playing in that green jersey for the first time. That was, at that point, I knew that it was just an amazing feeling.
Yeah. And what were you like in a new environment? Could you find in you're confident in yourself. Like you said, you're on the back of great performances, and you have nothing to lose, I suppose, mate, really, because you've not been through the age grades, like you said. So what was you like in that new environment?
I was always willing. I wanted to get myself in there and test myself and see who I was up against and see what I could do. And I was really much that I wanted to show people what I was capable of. I didn't want to be Trink and Val. I want to see that I get me in there. I want to get absolutely mucked in. But I was also social. I would talk to people. I would go and find new people to talk to. I wasn't one for playing safe and staying in a clique. I was always out talking with whoever and introducing myself to people and being in people's company. So I always find that really interesting, and I never really had much of a problem with it. I just, I was just like, I'm here because I deserve to be here, so I'm going to show you, but there was part of you I deserve to be here, but I also need to prove to a lot of you guys. You're talking about, get well-established guys, Rog and Stringer and Magsy and Hendo, and all of those guys, Branagh, Driscoll, of course, and I have to prove myself to you guys that I actually deserve to be here. Otherwise, it's why is he here? Who's your man? Did he win a competition? So that's not what I wanted to happen. So,
and did your mum get bigger playing cards, mate, for the write-up now?
So the scrapbooks came out and they got bigger and bigger. So so actually, I went back to Northern Ireland a couple of years ago, and she actually sent me packing a load of stuff because it was taking up so much room in the house. So I moved it from one attic to another here.
To another.
Yeah, so it'll come out in some shape or form. But yeah, they tracked everything, and they were really, really, really supportive of me, and I think they probably enjoyed the journey every bit as much as I did.
Yeah. Did you keep any other memorabilia, mate, like jerseys, programs, or out like
that? I guess that I kept the jerseys that were important to me for the big games. I kept my All-Ireland League final jersey with Ballymena. I kept my school jersey. I kept my my Ulster jerseys that I played in. But it's funny that when I made my Irish debut, that's probably the one shirt that you wanted to have. It actually never really it nearly didn't happen because we were playing in Samoa, and it was absolutely roasting. The humidity was through the roof. It was absolutely scorching. The boys were sweating at half time. We're in the changing room, was pretty rustic, and guy used to be shouted over. She threw me my spare shirt because everyone was sopping, and jerseys back those days were quite heavy. So I just picked this shirt off the peg and just launched it to him. And as I launched it, I sort of folded it up. I just went, oh no, and looked up, and there's a fan on the roof going. So the shirt's got into the fan. It's been chopped up. Spat out. Eddie O'Sullivan, the coach, has jumped a mile in the air, terrified. Keith Woods heard it, and he was just on tour just to be there as a presence, and started screaming at me. And I just going, oh, what have I done? Oh, what have I done? Yeah, the international career is actually just about to come to an end. So I can't believe I've done that. Anyway, I did get on the pitch, and Keith came up to me afterwards and said, listen, I'm sorry for shouting at you, but I screamed far too high pitch and was quite embarrassed. So I had to blame someone, and I blamed you. So anyway, after the game, I wanted to keep my jersey, and Runner O'Gara very kindly gave me his number 10 that I could swap, which was amazing. But Trevor Leota was the hooker for Samoa that day, and he'd actually gone home, and Keith actually went and found Trev whenever he came back to dinner, told him that it was my debut. Trev went back to his village, got a shirt, came back and gave it to me. So that was pretty special. And I guess the other one that was really special was I swapped jerseys with Jonah Lomu back in 2001, which was amazing, and it wasn't intended. We'd gone into Ireland A, we're playing New Zealand, and I'd sat on the bench, and this was pre-making my debut for Ireland A, but I'd never actually got on the pitch. I went into the changing room because Anton Oliver, the great All Black hooker, was the number 16. I thought I'll swap shirts with him. That would be amazing. Shane Byrne went in ahead of me, and he went to Tom Willis, who was the starting hooker, who said no. So he went to Anton Oliver instead. And I went, oh, what am I? So I just tapped the next bloke that walked past me and said, do you want to swap shirt? I didn't pay any attention who it was. And it was Jonah, and he was nice as pie, gave me it. And I was like, he took my jersey and he was grateful. And we had a quick chat. and it was amazing. And I sort of walked up and I'm not quite sure what just happened there, how that's actually managed to happen, but he was fantastically polite, really engaging, really interested in what you were talking about. So I have his jersey here. I still have it. I kept it, and to this day, I'd probably love to know what he did with the jersey that I gave him.
Yeah, what a story, though.
Whether that was a rag that the dog was sleeping in, or he used it to polish his car or something. He was really, I don't know, but yeah, that was pretty special.
Wow, yeah, that's brilliant. So how does the step up come again from Island A to Ireland? And again, is it another level change, or is it just that slightly bit quicker?
No, it's another level change altogether, because the intensity is there in the training weeks, the mindset, the full kit caboodle. Whenever it's Ireland Day, you've got the aspiration you want to be in the senior team, but you need to keep it fun, because you're kind of thrown together without, to play in a little series, and you try to keep it fun, to keep people engaged. With the Ireland stuff's completely different. The intensity is there all day long. The aspiration, the competition to get better, to be in the team, to be in the squad, to be in the tour, to be all of those things is there constantly. So yeah, that was a really, really big step up in the day-to-day things, but completely enjoyable and able to test yourself and know that, and comforting as well, that whenever you go to training and you come home, that you didn't look out of place. And that's probably as much of a relief as anything else.
Yeah. So you mentioned Samoa there, mate, and logistically, is it an easy travel, or no?
No, it's a nightmare. So it was pre-World Cup in 2003, and we went, and it was a 3-test tour. So we went to play Australia in Perth, and then we went to play Tonga in Nuku'alofa, and then we went to play Samoa in Apia. So we went to Perth, stayed there, played Australia. That was a game that Wendell Sealer and Lottie Takiri made their debuts, and they ran us absolutely ragged. And then we flew across and played Tonga, and that was interesting and culturally completely different. Great fun, great tour. I remember, walking out in the street, and there's a red pickup truck walking along, and there's a big shark fin sticking out the back of it. So you run after it and you have a look at it. There's this 10-foot shark in there. And I remember on the Sunday we were out the Sunday after we played the game, we went for a swim, and there was this red shipwreck out in the distance. And it was myself, Donnacha O'Callaghan, and Shane Byrne were doing a bit of snorkeling. So there's that shipwreck. And the guy because we went out in a little putt boat and then jumped in the water. So there's that shipwreck. I said, that's where they caught that shark the other day, wasn't it? I said, yeah. And I said, we're fighting each other to get back in the boat to get out of the water. So yeah, we played Tonga, and that was roasting. And I was actually rooming with Simon Best, who's a really, really good pal of mine. He's also my brother-in-law. We were married to sisters, and he made his debut there, which was just great to be there and to be a part of that for him. That was a special moment. And then we flew to Samoa, and you might know your geography. Whenever you fly to Samoa from Tonga, you cross the international date line. So you leave on the Tuesday and you land on the Monday that you've just had. So it's a bit Groundhog Day. So it throws you all over the place. So you go and do it. And then we trained in Samoa. We trained at the school. We had an amazing week. We stayed at Aggie Gray's, which was a really famous hotel out there. And coming in that tour, I got on, made my debut with 15-20 minutes to go, which was just an amazing experience. This photographs of me just smiling from ear to ear. So logistically, it was a nightmare tour, because we also forgot we had to stop off in Auckland on the way through, because obviously once you get to Perth, it's fine, but it's a long way to get to Australia, and then the other trips on top. So you couldn't really been any further away, but really special to have gone to places like that, because the opportunity to go to places like that just doesn't exist, or the chance to go there is really difficult. So I'm really thrilled to go to say that I've toured places like that, because they're just special places. The people are incredible. They're just special places.
So when your time comes to to leave Ulster, mate, is that a mutual thing? Are you just seeking a new challenge? And
I think it was reasonably mutual. I nearly left the season before. I was looking at my options the season before. I just couldn't get the right fit, and also were quite happy to let me go. And I think by that stage, Rory Best was playing. He was who the coaches had put all their faith in, and that's absolutely fine and quite right too. He went off to make 130 caps, captain his country, Grand Slam captain, many wonderful things, and a great player and a great servant for Ulster and Ireland. But for me, it was like I just needed a bit more. I was like, I know I still have stuff to offer, and I don't want to look back and say that I took the easy option and stayed. And Mark McCall spoke to me and said that they weren't going to renew my contract. And I was like, if he hadn't said it to me, I might have said it to him. So whether it was a real catalyst to go, yeah, you're right, I shouldn't stay here. I need to go and do something different. And I did. And that was in 2007, and I'm still here. So it was probably the best decision I made from a sporting and life choice, definitely.
And so when it comes to possibly reaching out, mate, how does that work? The clubs approach you? Do you put the feelers out? And
so
there's a sort of middle thing?
I had an agent at the time, much as I worked with them and against them. Now, I had an agent at the time, Ryan Constable, who was corner flag at the time, who just reached out to clubs to see who was looking for players and what position they look for. And as tends to happen, that this club's looking for a hooker, this club's looking for a hooker, this club's looking for a hooker, this club's not. This is their budget. This is what they're looking for. So came back with a couple of clubs that were interested, but it was Northampton that were concrete, wanted me to go across and meet them, and that was amazing to me, because it was a club. I remember watching Rugby Special whenever I was young, and it was, Northampton had Buck Shelford and Tim Rodber and Ian Hunter playing for them, so it was a massive interest to me, and I always knew they were a big club, so I was dead excited about going to meet them.
When you have them talks, mate, is it a show around the ground? Do you meet people outside of the boardroom sort of thing, or is it strictly business till you agree?
No, you need to get a snap. So back then it was getting a snapshot of what the place was like. So I went across, I had a really good look at the ground, and I stayed in a hotel, and I met with the coaching staff at the time. They talked with me what their philosophy, what they saw me, what they wanted me to bring if it happened. After the meeting, the club gets in touch with my agent. They say they actually want to bring you in. You let them negotiate and come to an agreement. Then you go across and do a medical and sign the contract. And I brought my wife over with me, who was my fiance at the time, because we hadn't got married yet. But we came across, and after we went up to see Keith Borwell, who was the owner of the club and a great human, and we went in to meet him. And he just dismissed me straight off, and we just went straight for Gemma and just how important she was and all the rest of it. And he's absolutely right. So it's funny, because Northampton I knew I was signing for them, and I'd signed for them, and they were at the bottom end of the table, and they were. I remember watching. I was with Jem's sister and her husband Alaric. We were down. We were away somewhere. I was following the last day of the Premiership season, and Northampton were getting relegated, and I was like, it doesn't matter. I'm completely invested in what they're trying to do, and it's too big a club, and they'll bounce back up. And whenever they bounce back up, I can say I was part of the whole rebirth of Northampton Saints, and I saw the whole thing and was there the whole time, and seeing the bottom and the top, and I can look back on that proudly, and I'm glad to say that I was right in in saying that that's what was going to happen.
So you went and done a Toulouse on them. Rocked up, turned it around.
I can't say it was me. I think there was a lot of guys over there. It was nothing to do with me. We had a lot of good players that year. We were really well coached with Jim Mallender and Dorian West and Paul Grayson. And that was a team that was playing in the championship that had Tom Smith and Ewan Murray and Carlos Spencer and Sharkey Robinson and Bruce Rehana and Sean Lamont and Chris Ashton, and the list goes on. We were far too good for that league, and we won the league without losing a game. Not many guys can say they've done that. So it was an amazing experience. But geez, we did some drinking on that year.
I can imagine, mate. And again, without being rude to some of the clubs in that league, you'd have gone to places that probably weren't at the best facility wise. Like you were everybody's cup final as well, so it takes some doing, doesn't it?
Listen, absolutely. And you had the target on your head every time you play. I think whenever we played that season, I think there was about 5 teams. We Exeter, Cornish Pirates, Launceston, Plymouth, all in that league. So we were down in the toe of England, any number of times, and that's a 5 or 6 hour bus journey. So you can imagine how many beers are down on the way home from that 5 or 6 times. So yeah, and we went to some places, but it was brilliant because it was getting in touch, and it was a stark reminder that if your aspirations are hard to play in the Premiership, that if you don't get it right, then this is where you could be. But brilliant, it always brought out great crowds. People were there, really supportive. Glad you were there. Great to see you. But I still laugh at some of the memories of the toilet cubicle being right beside number 23 in the changing room. So almost
sharing a door.
Yeah, sure. Almost touching feet. Yeah. Touching feet as one's in the trap and one's outside. So, but yeah, brilliant times.
Yeah. And was it when the end of the season comes round, mate? Do you feel justified when they keep up? Did they keep hold of a lot of that team as well? Didn't they? Yeah,
they kept hold of some of them, but we needed to evolve because essentially there wasn't. There was a few guys added to it, but to be aspirational, I mean, they needed to bring more in, and Jim and Dorian really identified the young English talent. They went after Lee Dixon and Ben Foden to bring these guys into the environment to grow at full dose, and followed not too long afterwards. So and then international talent like Nacho Lobby, the 2 guys from Ulster came over, Roger Wilson and Neil Betts came across to add a bit of steel to the place and experience. So really cute in terms of how they did it, not going out to sign superstars, but signing guys who were going to be fit for the league, that were actually going to make us seriously competitive and hard to beat, with it knowing that it was going to be a journey for us to get to the top.
Yeah, a few of them names, without being rude to them again, can play both sides of the line. They can play the nice stuff and the rough, dirty stuff, can't they? And they're quite happy in either way. It doesn't matter.
Absolutely, and bringing someone like Neil Best in, because Neil Best is one of the toughest guys you could ever play with or against. Just one of those guys made of granite, just no concept for his own safety, would throw himself into everything at a zillion miles an hour, and he was a good example to everyone that that's what you did, and he was absolutely brilliant at it. And that's one of the reasons he was brought in, to give us an edge, to make us more, to give us a physical edge. He would not back down from a challenge.
Yeah. So what are the standout memories as a player at Northampton, mate? What stand out for you?
I guess when I was playing, I only played 2 seasons. I played one season in the Championship and then 1 season in the Premiership. I guess the standout memories for me was finishing the season whenever we actually went and played at Twickenham against Exeter. That was the first time I'd ever played at Twickenham, and we'd won the cup final. It was the EDF Trophy, I think it was back then, and we won that, and that was an amazing experience for me, just to be involved in that and to run out of Twickenham. That was amazing. And then the next one was actually making my Premiership debut. There's something about having a shirt. They didn't do it at Ulster, they didn't do it in Ireland, but having a shirt with your name on the back of it hung up in the changing room whenever you go into play, that's an amazing feeling. And that's probably the biggest standout one, to make your debut for Northampton, say it's at Franklin's Gardens with your name on the back of a jersey, is just really, really it just gives you that boost. You talk to kids now that come into the academy and the aspiration, I want to play with my name on the shirt. I want to play with my name on the shirt. That's the aspiration. So yeah, those are probably the 2 biggest standout memories for me. As a player, there's been lots more since I've gone on the other side, but as a player, those are the big ones for me.
Yeah, we'll touch on them now, mate. So when the time on the field, playing wise, is coming to an end, have you sort of picked little pieces off everyone you've been around, and when you put that together, did it equate to the role you're in? And talk to us about the role you're in.
So the way it finished, there was myself and my as I mentioned earlier, my eldest was born at the time, so we only had one. We were quite settled in Northampton and weren't quite ready to leave. We just bought rugby tots, as I mentioned earlier, so we were just like, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So I said to the gym and the coaching staff, "Is there ever a job you think that would be suitable for me? I'm open to listening because we're not leaving yet." I didn't really know where my career was going to go at that stage. If I wanted to coach or what I wanted to do, or give the rugby tots thing a crack. I had to finish because of injury, so thankfully I was insured, so I was getting my salary paid out. So I had time on my side to work out what I wanted to do. And they came to me and said, "What about being team manager?" And I'd never really considered it, but thought about it, weighed it up, and went, it actually really suited me. And I was definitely give it a crack. I'm definitely keen to give it a crack. And I learned from the guys that had been before me, Lenny Newman and John at Northampton, and John McComish at Ulster, and other guys that I'd learned bits and pieces from, spoken with the players and knew what it meant to be a team manager, knew what players want from a team manager. So that was quite straightforward. And I did that for 10 years. Evolved into it, learned that for 10 years, and then really enjoyed it, that sort of feeling of involvement, looking after you're basically just facilitating everything, just picking, problem solving, facilitating, and you're not involved in the glamorous stuff. That's all the decisions are made up, but you're just making sure that all those things happen. The buses turn up and the hotels are booked and everyone's on a flight and the visas are there and all that stuff, and everyone's got their kit. All those wee bits are, you're a cog in the wheel. And then subsequent to that, I moved into recruitment. I was doing a bit of the recruitment. I was doing the recruitment while I was team manager, but Chris Boyd came in and split the job. Said it was probably worth splitting the job. And at the time, you think, no, I'm capable of doing both. But on reflection, you go, it actually probably works. It works better for me because my kids were at an age where I wanted to see them play at the weekends. And that had been 20 years of professional rugby, of the same hotels, the same bus journeys. I remember being on one of the bus journeys home, and I was like, I'd seen the evolution of getting on the bus and reading the paper and then the magazines, and then videos come on the bus and everyone watches the video, and then iPads and then playing cards and then everything else and podcasts and movies. And you go, I remember just I've seen it all. I don't know what I want to do, but I know I don't want to be on this bus. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to travel anymore. And so it worked out well for me that I'm completely focused on recruitment, and doing it means that I can give it all the attention that it needs to be to make it as successful as possible. So you pick up loads of bits and pieces from those around you along the way, some good, some bad. You learn how to talk to people and learn how not to talk to other people, but it's all part of the learning, and still learning every day.
Every day is a lesson, mate, especially when you're talking. Unfortunately, the world we're in, money's heavily motivated, isn't it? And it'll level things out if you're good enough and you put enough in. The money follows, doesn't it?
I think so. I think it does. And some guys will have really lucked out that have had a career where they'd have played, maybe 100 times for England and earned very healthy salaries. And there's other guys who will have just come to their peak now, whenever rugby's just at a point where it's trying to navigate some pretty choppy waters, and the finances aren't there for what they feel it's now is their time for earning, and the money's just not there. And that's really, that's unfortunately, that's just where rugby's at the minute. And we just need, I genuinely believe the sport is going to continue and it's going to be absolutely fine. There's too many people care about it for it to not happen. And, there's a lot of bright people out there that'll come together and work it out, and will be absolutely fine. But it's going to be choppy for those guys who think that it's the money's just not there. We've seen it with with losing Wasps and with losing Worcester, that it can be taken away from you really, really quickly. So we just got to be very careful and frugal about how we navigate the next part for all of us.
So, player, was you someone that liked to be told direct, and is that something you've took forward with the way you speak to people? You don't sugarcoat stuff. You're just pretty honest, transparent, and straight to the point.
I think that I think the biggest skill now and the biggest challenge is managing the modern day rugby player, because they're not the same. Everyone's different, and I think a skill you have is working on how to talk to people, and realize it's some people react better with a foot on their head, and other guys actually need a cuddle more often than not. If you've made a mistake, you know you've made a mistake. So I don't need you to tell me. I know I've made it, and no one is beating me up more than I'm beating me up. You don't need to tell me. And sometimes you think you've had a good game, you walk in to speak to a coach and he absolutely rollicks you, and you go, okay, well, maybe my reset my standards about where I think I need to be here. And so I knew, but I always went to get feedback, and I was always of the opinion that you couldn't just go in whenever you played well. If you told you played well, you had to go in every week. If you played badly,
both sides of the coin. Yeah,
you had to face the music. So no, I was whatever came. I think it was all part of the learning. And I think, not to answer your question, no, I think that some people need to be told quite blunt and straightforward, but others need cajoled in a different way, and need a different way of explaining, because if you get it, they just go in a completely different direction than where you want to take them, and that's tricky. So yeah, no, I think it's an art for us all to navigate how to manage people.
What are you looking for in a player at Northampton Saints? Is it the same as what you'd look for in an academy product to an international? Do you still look for the same attributes regardless of the age and level they're at?
Yeah, I think so. I think we want some, you'll have seen with our, with the makeup of our squad that we are, we really look for, young, high potential. We identify as an English club. English qualification would be, is quite important for us. But we also are looking for people of high character, who've got grit, who've got a bit about them, are competitive, that are up for a fight, up for a scrap, want to push and drive competition in the squad. So in terms of that criteria, yeah, you're looking for the same thing in your academy kids that are coming through, that you're looking for in your senior guys. You don't always get them. You can't. What you might want, there might not be an English version of what you want. So and it's always good to go to and bring someone in from a foreign league who is bringing a different perspective and a different learning. And I think that's great. We've got to grow and evolve, but I think to make that successful, you've got to have real good alignment in your squad, from your coaches, from your senior coaches to your academy coaches to your pathway coaches, who are all aligned the same way about development and making people better and making them better rugby players. I think that's the core, but it has to be aligned. You can't have one going one way, one going another, because ultimately it doesn't end up in the same spot.
So I didn't mention this to you beforehand, but when you signed because I know you've signed many an international in the past, and the recent one that's just caught my head now is someone like Dan Bigger, which has recently left. Does the old cap rule make a big difference when you're looking at signing players like that? Because Wales have the cap rule, don't they? And then England have people that if they play outside the country, except for the likes of the Wasps and the Worcester players at the minute, they have that special exemption, don't they? Does that make it more difficult to attract the likes of Dan Bigger and that?
I think it is. I think for a lot of clubs, you have to, for every club has to know their identity and what is it that you represent, what is your DNA, and what is your strategy whenever you're recruiting players. So, and also, it's an English league. The English qualified players, the EQP funding is quite substantial. It's worth quite a significant amount of money to have an average amount of players in your squad every week. So you need to be, if it's important to you as a club, which it is to us, that we identify as English, that we have that money, that we meet that average every week. So we actually have that money available to. So if we go outside that, we want to bring in real quality. So in bringing in someone like that, we just knew that we wanted to bring someone in who was that was top class. We wanted a top class fly half to come in that was going to drive standards and give us something different. And Dan was absolutely a guy that, whenever I spoke with his agent, was very keen to talk to us, and we very nearly got him the season before. We just couldn't make it work. But I haven't got enough good words to say about someone like Dan. There's actually quite he'd signed for the club, but he'd come up with his wife to have a look around the place. He said, it was during a fallow week in the 6th. He said, "Can I come up?" And I said, yeah, no problem. Come up on Wednesday. He said, "No, I'd like to come on Saturday, if that's all right, with my wife Alex and her dad." And I was like, "Oh, that's a day off, but okay, sure." And my wife was away with my wife was away with my daughter, so I had my 2 sons with me, Hugh and Finn, so that they came along with me. I was like, "Listen, you're gonna have to come along." Oh, we met him at the club, and I said, "Sit in the corner. You're gonna know who it is, but it's a secret. You're not allowed to tell anyone." So they were a fair bit younger, and they walked in, and so Biggs walked in with Alex, and the boys were, "Oh my goodness, there he is! Isn't that amazing?" So anyway, so we took them for a walk around the ground, Alex and her dad, and they were showing them everything, and Biggs was brilliant, really engaging with the boys, really asking them, and he asked my son Finn. My Finn's favourite player was always George North whenever he played at the club. So he said, "So who
was he honest?"
Yeah, well, he was a bit too honest. So he said to him, "Who was your who you supporting during the Six Nations?" And the boys went, "Ireland. Why would I be supporting anyone else?" And I was thinking, "Oh, Finn, I know your favourite player is George North. So go on, Finn. Why don't you tell Dan who your favourite player is?" And he went, "Johnny Sexton. He's the best out half in the Six Nations." And I'm like, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Why have you said that? I'm just trying to bring this guy to Northampton, and you can't be saying that." But Dan was brilliant. He took it all in really good spirits. But so go back to is bringing someone like Dan is the same as whenever you bring in someone like Louis Pickemall. You're looking for that top world class international standard that's just going to give you something different, because big players win big games, and and what Dan gave to us in those 4 years was absolutely immense for us all out on the pitch.
And obviously having the likes of your Cartneys, Laws and your Hoodlums and Tommy Freeman, George Furbank, it just shows local lads, like you mentioned before, the avenue is there, not only to represent Northampton, but you're a good enough club that breeds good players enough for international selectors to take note as well, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we are, when Chris Boyd came in, he was very much of the opinion that if you were good enough, you got the opportunity, and he gave a lot of young players an opportunity. And there's some epiphanal moments in conversations with guys like Lewis Ludlam, who, whenever he came over and visited, told him he didn't work hard enough, and he didn't put it in whenever he watched him, and if he wanted any sort of future, he was going to have to work it out. And Luds is now club captain and playing so well for England. It's just brilliant to see. But the foundations were sort of put in there before that with Jim Mallender and Dusty Hare, and the investment into the academy and sorting the pathways and the regions so that these players were coming through. Your Furbanks, Moons, Coles, Hutchinsons, Harry Mallender, all of those guys coming through, which meant that we were producing these guys. And I would put our record up against anyone for producing international rugby players. And even recently we've had Coles and Ribbons have gone in there, having cut their teeth with us, and even to a lesser extent, someone like Andrew Kellaway, who left Australia and still came to play for us for a year. Still, he went back and then went straight into the Wallaby setup, and he would still credit us with being a big factor in why he's playing international, because his time he spent with us. So, we're really grateful for that, and So for us, we're like, if you want to develop and become a better rugby player, we will do that. We've a great coaching staff and great alignment around the club, so it's a real good opportunity to do that.
No, 100%. You're doing something right, and you're definitely a club to be noted for, like you said, with bringing youngsters through and giving them that platform to express themselves, right? Isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And we got a good crop of youngsters coming in next year that have played England 18s already. Toby Cousins and Henry Pollock and Archie McParland are coming in next year, and 2 of those guys have already made their debut for the first team squad this season. As schoolboys. So the opportunities there. We're quite excited about the lads that we have coming in and what the future holds with them.
Yeah, mate. So just a couple of daft questions for you now, if that's okay.
Of course.
So, any pre-match superstitions when you were playing?
I used to drive, whenever I played at Raven, I used to drive the same way. I had to go the same way to training. I would always have eaten the same food when I was at home, and always have eaten the same food in a hotel. And I would always have done everything left before right. Left sock, right sock. Always had to do that. Those wee things. I'd like to think that I wasn't superstitious, but whenever you think back, clearly if I didn't do those things, I was stripping off and starting again to make sure I actually got it right.
So your toughest player you played with and against, well, tough being different for everybody, Paul.
Yeah, I guess the toughest guy I played with was probably Neil Best. He was just teak tough granite, just a different mindset about his physicality and his edge and what he'd hit things and how hard his fitness levels and everything else. He was just phenomenal. And I guess the toughest player to play against was Fabien Pelouse, the old French second row. I remember going in to hit him in a ruck in my debut, and I flew into the ruck and hit him full tilt, and he barely moved. And I just remember thinking, "Oh right, okay, this is what we have to do." And I think he actually picked me up by the waistbands and just chucked me away, chucked me out of the place. But he was always tough, and even remember running full tilt into Fabien Galtier once, and he absolutely buried me. And I went, "All right, fair play, fair play." But I'd say, yeah, nice to meet you. But I'd say Fabien Pelouse, I would say.
Right. So your favourite away ground?
My favourite away ground, I guess that I enjoyed playing. I guess the favourite away ground for me really was when we played. Whenever we went and played at Kingsholm, I really enjoyed playing at Kingsholm because that was a ground that was the crowd were in early. They were giving it verbals all the time in your ear whenever you're practicing your line out and your warm up and everything else. They're there and they are just in your ear trying to hammer you. So it's a great place to go and win and find out how how strong your minerals are and how you get on with it. But I think the best away ground I've been to, the one that I've been blown away with, was when we went and played Claremont about 4 or 5 years ago. We went with Claremont. I remember going the day before. I guess this isn't much of a stadium. I don't know what all the hype is about. Then you go in 2 hours before kickoff, and the thing is just yellow, and it is just bouncing. There's messages coming down the radio to make substitutions, and you can't hear it because it's so loud. So that's an incredible rugby experience. That.
Yeah. No, it comes across on telly like that as well, to be honest with you, doesn't it? It does come across lively.
It's very, very lively. But just a sea of yellow, just guys completely invested in the club and just love being there from 2 hours before, just beating the drum for 2 hours. So you walk away with a bit of a headache, just the sound of the drum in your ear for 2 hours. But no, great place to go.
So on some of them away journeys, mate, you'd had a few back when you were in the champ and the microphone ended up in your hand. What would you give us?
I saw it used to be the Monkeys' Daydream Believer, but then we just came out and did Teenage Dirtbag. So it was Teenage Dirtbag for me. We got really good friends of ours that went to dinner about 3 or 4 years ago, and they bumped into Keith Wood, who was on that tour with me, and they said, "Oh." They wanted to introduce themselves. Did he know me? And he started singing Teenage Dirtbag to them. So I guess I made some sort of impression somewhere along the line. So yeah,
you'd have made boot camp.
I would have made boot. I'm not sure. I would have made it to the judge's house. I'm not sure. I might have been thrown out the door. But yeah, that would have been it for me.
That's brilliant. So if you could go back and speak to a younger self, what would you tell yourself?
Train harder. I always thought I was training hard and putting it in. But the reality is that I look back at my career with a bit of frustration. I'm really proud to say that I've some of the things that I've achieved, but I still think I could have achieved more. I still look back and think I underachieved. I could have done more. I could have had. The reason I didn't have more caps or more appearances is that's on me. That's no one else. That's me. So I would go back and tell myself to apply yourself as much as you possibly can. Give it as much as you can. Use every session to get better, because whenever you look back, and if you haven't looked back and given it everything, you'll only look back with regret. And I think that is probably what I would tell myself, is that you've got to throw, even whenever you think that you can't train any harder, you can. There's more that you could be doing to make yourself better and apply yourself.
That's fair enough, mate. And if you're willing to, a 1 to 15 that you've played with?
Yeah, of course. So I guess that I'm really lucky to play with some good people. So if I just take the internationals out of it, because that would be obvious. So I'll say Soani Tongawiya at 1, which is quite good because our sons now play together at school and at club. I'm going to pick myself at 2 because I don't think anyone else will. So I'm going to put myself in the team. And then
kick it.
No, if you saw me kick, you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't put me in there. And on the tight head, I was lucky to play with some really good tight heads like Ewan Murray and Simon Best and Robbie Kempson. But I would probably say, I'm going to say Rod Moore, because he came across from Australia at the time. He just played in the World Cup and he just played in the series for the Lions. And I learned so much from Rod that he was pretty important for my career at that stage in terms of my learning. In the second row, I'd say Jeremy Davidson and Justin Harrison. Whenever Jez I played with Jez whenever he came back from the Lions tour in 2001 from Australia. He'd just come back from Cast and I played with him, and his knees weren't there, but he was still an unbelievable player in terms of what he was capable of doing. And when Justin Harrison came into the squad, it was really quite a big man that was very athletic, had run the line out, gave a physical edge, and despite what people think about him, he's actually a really great bloke. So and a good mate. So I would say those guys in that position. I'd pick Roger Wilson at number 8. You know, for Ulster and Northampton, just so consistent, so available all the time. You know, absolutely fantastic player. And then I would probably pick Neil Best at 6, just because he was so physical and abrasive, and I've covered all those points. And then at 7, I picked Andy Ward. Wardy was brilliant, great leader, great fun, great player. You know, just a guy that played for the love of the game. Really, really great player. Good to have around the change, good in the environment. So he was great to have around the place. Neil Doak at 9. Dokie at 9 was phenomenally talented, and you know, his son Nathan's playing for Ulster now, and he's a cracking player as well. But Dokie is someone that was quite good in terms of applying himself. He got a second chance at professional rugby and bit at it and took it and was outstanding whenever he got going. 10 would be David Humphreys. When Humph played well for Ulster, we played well. He basically just used to hit a wiper kick across the pitch. You know, Jackie was if he played well, you knew we were going to win. If he was hitting his goals, kicking the ball, it was we every chance to win. And he performed at such a high level for such a long period of time. He was an awesome player. In the centres, I'll go with Paddy Wallace and Johnny Bell, and an honourable mention to Jimmy Downey, who was amazing whenever he was playing in Northampton, just absolutely banging thing. But I hit the scene at about the same time as Paddy. Paddy's one of my best pals, and he was phenomenal talent, loved playing the game, you know, was so, you know, played 10, 12, 15 for us. He was just able to play anywhere and perform and be outstanding. So he was a cracking player. And then Johnny Bell at 13, Dinger was so professional, applied himself the whole time, so diligent, such a good rugby player. I remember meeting him. He signed an autograph for me, but the combined provinces were playing the Springboks in 1995, and I was, as a kid, trying to get autographs for all of these big Springboks, Francois Pienaar and Jules van der Vestes, and then I'm looking around and the autograph book's taken out of my hand, and I look around and Johnny Bell signs it and gives it back to me. And I didn't ask him for it. He said, "There you go." I said, "Oh, thanks." But I didn't know Dinger at the time. It's only whenever we were playing for Ulster years, I brought the autograph book into him and went, look what you did. Springboks all over this autograph book, and then Johnny Bell's in the middle of it. So we still laugh about it. And then On the wings, I would go with Jimmy Topping and Sean Lamont. Jimmy was one of the guys I really looked up to whenever I was actually quite young. So I used to see him out and about, and always went straight up to him just to be in his company, and wanted to be around him because I looked up to him so much. And whenever he played we won the All-Ireland League with Ballymena that year, and Jimmy was just phenomenal. Some of the tries he scored were just incredible, so influential. He was just brilliant that year, and just such a strong, good guy to play with. And Monty on the other side played with at Northampton, and he was just a heck of a rugby player, 100 cap Centurion international, fantastic rugby player. Been around an awful long time, still keep in touch with him. He's still working in rugby with Scotland and doing a great job. And then at fullback, Bryn Cunningham's probably the safest pair of hands. I don't think I ever saw him drop a high ball, but I'd probably have to say Ben Foden. Fodes at that stage, I played 1 year with Fodes, and the kid was able to do things that he just hit the line and go, and he was quick and he was strong, and he was just playing with a freedom that he could just go and do things, and more often than not he was actually going to be able to do it. So yeah, and there's lots of guys that I'll have left out. The 1 year I played a couple of years with Courtney. If I was playing with Courtney now, he'd be in your team all the time, but playing with the best of these guys, it's probably bestie. But yeah, I'm pretty fortunate to have played with some pretty good people around the years.